So we're both content creators, sadly. We want people to watch our content, and we try to give our titles and our thumbnails a bit of a hook, okay? There's no shame with a little clickbait, but sometimes you pod save guys, you go a little too far with it, okay?
Well, sometimes.
I'm gonna give you some of these thumbnail titles, and I need some answers, okay?
So these are the YouTube thumbnails.
These are the YouTube thumbnails,
yeah, these are,
and we gotta talk about this.
This is Elijah's fault.
All right, I call this Democratic Party fan fiction. Start with our first.
I hate this in advance.
Let's start with our first one. Okay, this is insane. How broke is Donald Trump? Now, in fairness, this video.
Look how surprised I am.
Yeah.
What? Are you
He
kidding
has
me?
no money.
How? What? Where's all his money?
The video, to be fair to you, was about something about he needed to make bail on something and whatever. Can we stop with this nonsense?
Yeah.
The man has huge buildings in New York City with his name on it. He flies around in jets.
He's very rich.
He's very rich.
He's very rich.
So
stupid thumbnail. I'll take responsibility.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not gonna do that one again.
Here's another thumbnail.
Oh no.
Is Fox News doomed?
Look, that I'm gonna defend because at the time, that was when the defamation suit was happening and we didn't know how bad it was.
This one, John, I really want your genuine perspective on.
Oh no.
Could Trump go to jail?
Well, see, I'm in my house, which means it was during the pandemic, which means it was probably after January 6th.
But John, you really thought Donald Trump was gonna go to jail?
After January 6th?
We live in the United States of America. Presidents don't go to jail. That only happens in healthy democracies like Guatemala. There is no way.
What did you think after January 6th?
No, he was not going to be perp walked. Listen, man, like this does not happen in America. Like,
I think that if the January 6th case had gone through, and he had done a whole trial and he was convicted, I think there was and wasn't running again, right? Like say he never decided to run again and become president. I think there's a chance you'd get some home confinement.
No, I mean what I mean by
like get an ankle bracelet.
In all seriousness, in America, if you are incredibly wealthy and incredibly rich and powerful, you can appeal your way into never serving.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Long before any votes were counted in November, it was clear who would win the 2024 presidential election. Podcasters.
Now they're calling it the podcast election.
In some ways, this is like the podcast election.
I mean, this is sort of a podcast election.
Kind of the podcast election.
We are now in the podcast election moment.
No podcast was better positioned for this historic collision of politics and men who like to hear themselves talk than Pod Save America. Started by a small herd of former Obama staffers after Trump's first inauguration, Pod Save America was the one-stop shop for all your resistance needs. News recaps, interviews, workshops on organizing, fundraising for candidates, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, mugs, tote bags, bumper stickers, pins, yard signs, baby onesies, pet bandanas, band-aids, candles, fanny packs, their own brand of fucking coffee, clipboards, pens, water bottles, and socks. Seriously, are you guys a podcast or a fucking flea market? But by 2024, the resistance had stagnated, weighed down by its warehouses of unsold merch and a president who kept threatening to do 9/11.
We're gonna watch the debate, and then tomorrow I'm doing 9/11.
And while we were all freaking out about Biden, the media landscape had completely shifted. A growing manosphere of brocasts had outbroed the Pod Save Bros as the home of political discourse. So, to help me sort through all of this, I sat down with the Pod Save founder, Jon Favreau, to talk about podcasting's influence on politics, the resistance on life support, and the question on everyone's mind who owns one of their Mother Earth is a MILF bucket hats. Why didn't Pod Save America? There's a real bucket hat that says Mother Earth is a MILF. Should we get started? You guys are like a real company.
We are a real company.
You guys are real.
We like to pretend.
Yeah.
We like to pretend.
Mr. Jon Favreau.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we are speaking 2 days after the inauguration. This will come out a little bit later, and a million other crazy things will happen.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to ask you, how you doing?
It's so funny because I've been asking my guests that as well. I'm okay.
Yes.
I decided that it took me about 43 years to figure this out, but I decided that there's no use in dooming about the future because that's not going to affect the outcome, right? Being nervous about what might happen under a second Trump presidency. So I'm just trying to take one day at a time.
Okay.
And do whatever I can to help.
That is very CBT of you. It's very cognitive behavioral therapy of you.
That's a couple years of that talking now.
Yeah. To not panic about the future. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to sit down with you specifically, Jon, is after Trump's 2016 win, there was this tidal wave of this kind of hashtag not my president energy. And it was very, very big and palpable in the media and popular cultural ecosystem. Certainly that turbocharged some of the enthusiasm behind Pod Save America. And crooked media almost was like a quasi headquarters for the resistance, where popular figures and artists and cultural leaders would come through and podcast with you guys. Now we're sitting down 2 days after Trump's inauguration. It's exactly 8 years to the month since you started the podcast. Do you feel, and this is just a feeling, do you feel like the resistance failed?
I do feel, look, he wins in 2016. Democrats win in 18, win in 20.
Yes.
Better than expected in 22. Lose spectacularly in 24.
Right.
So the resistance succeeded in part, but Donald Trump is president now, so obviously something's amiss, something didn't work. And I think, for the Democratic Party right now, I think that the party is at its lowest point since any time I can remember, since being in politics when I joined John Kerry's campaign in 2003.
Wow, so you've been working in politics for 22 years now?
Yes, I'm old now.
You said, and you feel like this is the lowest?
For the party, yeah, I think so. I think Donald Trump has more power now, and the Republican Party has more power now than they've had at any point in my lifetime. Partly because of not just the majorities in Congress, though they are slight in the House, the courts, the Supreme Court, and now the way that Trump is already wielding power as president.
On the Pod Save America website, you describe it as, quote, a political podcast for people who aren't ready to give up or go insane.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I think a lot of Democrats clearly have given up, and many of them have gone insane.
For sure.
Okay. So have you lost your entire audience?
No. I thought people asked before Trump won, they're like, oh, it's going to be terrible for the country if Trump won, but probably pretty good for you guys. And I was like, first of all, I don't care. Right. Like, rather close the whole company down than have Donald Trump be president again. He's president again. But second of all, I was like, look, I worried that this time around, and it still may be true, that people will feel so dejected and so much despair that they will just tune out altogether. And I think for some segment of the population that has happened. I think some people just wanted to take a break since the election. But our audience has stuck around. I think partly.
What are the DMs like? Is it just like, is it people on Blue Sky that have snorted Adderall? Is it like desperate cries for help? What is the temperature?
The temperature is a lot of people scared, looking for answers, angry. There's a lot of anger in the months after the election, and people just sort of wonder. It's a lot of people just like wandering around, sort of what do we do now? What happened? Like, I think people are still in shock.
Okay, so those DMs.
Yeah.
The what do we do now? All lowercase question mark. How do you respond to that? You on some level are. You have a parasocial therapist relationship with your audience. So what do you tell them in those moments?
I tell them that it is fine to give up if you want to give up, right? Giving up assures that the bad things will happen. It doesn't even give us a chance to stop it. And that's fine if you want, but also it's going to be really hard to outrun those bad things, even if you're not paying attention to politics. You might not care about politics, but politics cares about you. And it's going to affect you. And I think we've all seen that. Like, for me, it really hit me that Donald Trump is going to be president again. It was a week before the inauguration. I live in Los Angeles, and the fires hit. And there was so much misinformation. There's so much anger. it was so hard to figure out what exactly to do, how to navigate the crisis. Should we evacuate? Should we not? Because our information systems are all a mess. And you've got Trump, talking about Gavin Newsom, and then you've got everyone mad at Newsom, and then people are mad at Karen Beck. And it was such a mess. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is what life in the Trump era is like. This is what we're going to get for the next 4 years. Because even in the most optimistic scenario that like Trump just, does all of his corruption, makes a bunch of money, and we somehow get through the next 4 years, there are going to be disasters, there are going to be crises, because every president faces disasters and crises. And the question is, how do you respond in those moments? And I worry now that we do not, as a country, have the capacity to collectively respond and navigate crises in this political environment.
As a byproduct of the disconnect that we have person to person with communities, or algorithm to algorithm?
Algorithm to algorithm for sure. And I think that what the algorithms have done is that they just further polarize the country. And so, and the other thing that's happened is, again, everything is politics now. Everything that happens in the world becomes politics. That's probably always been the case, but there was a time when a wildfire or an earthquake or a hurricane would happen, and Republicans and Democrats, even though they were fighting like crazy, would at least
it's outside of partisan.
Yeah, it's like, let's just at least let this happen and take care of people. And now we saw it with Hurricane Helene, we saw it with the fires. Now it's just, we're off the rails.
Okay. One of the things that I've noticed post-inauguration is the vibe shift has just been instantaneous. Why do you think Donald Trump is being culturally embraced in a way that would have been political suicide 8 years ago? Now it's just...
Yeah. I think there's a couple of reasons, a couple of guesses, because I don't know for sure. One is that people are scared. I think some of the people who are kissing up to him are genuinely scared of the power he has. I think that's true of some journalists.
You really believe that? From celebrities to tech oligarchs? Do you think that there's a fear?
Tech oligarchs are a different story. I'll get to them.
Okay.
But I think that, among Democratic politicians, Republican politicians, these people have had like threats to their families. They've gone through all kinds of things, and I think they're worried. So there's a little bit of that.
Okay.
I think for corporate America and for the tech oligarchs specifically, they realize that Donald Trump is transactional by nature, and if you kiss his ass, he'll give you what you want, and what they want is for the government to leave them alone, because a lot of them have this libertarian bent to them. And I think some of them, by the way, have been radicalized by their own platforms, in the case of Elon Musk.
I think for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I could be totally wrong. My take is it's a reflection, the vibe shift is a reflection of the power of the popular vote. In 2016, obviously, there was a legitimate argument to be made of like, hey, Donald Trump's win is not a reflection of the country. The man didn't even win the popular vote. And people could be legitimately marching outside being like, no, he won because of the Electoral College. But this time, there's no asterisk to the W. And I think that is why the resistance has somewhat evaporated and MAGA is allowed to run wild. It was a decisive victory. Do you think there's truth in my assessment?
Yes, I do. I also think it's interesting when he first won. It wasn't just like maybe he's not legitimate, but it was this idea that it was so close.
Yeah.
Right. And we blamed a million different things. Right. This was it was Russia, or it was Facebook, or Hillary didn't go to Wisconsin, or it was just racism, right? Or any of the other millions of explanations. Now, if Kamala Harris had lost the election by like 5,000 votes in Wisconsin, I think not only would you see the resistance, organize, march through the streets, all that kind of stuff. I think it would be even harder. It's clarifying what happened. At least this is how I see it.
Got it.
Like, I feel like this level of win, which is not a huge win, but like you said, it is a decisive win.
Yeah.
I think it is clarifying about where the country is. I said that before the election. I was like, if he wins, then we'll know something about the country.
You've said that the existence of crooked media is a way to give people a way to channel that emotion into something more constructive than Reddit. It was very funny. But the solution for Pod Save America, the direction that I'm seeing is vote for Democrats. You even have a political action wing that is a part as a way to fund candidates. But I've found something, and this is just from me traveling the country and performing for a wide variety of different audiences in different states.
Yeah.
The general public as a whole doesn't trust politicians as a whole.
100%.
On either side because they don't think that they represent them.
And less so than at any time in recent history.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with them. They feel like they represent their donors. So how is voting even harder for Democrats the answer to their concern?
It's not. It's part of what we want to do and what we've been trying to do, as well as just vote for Democrats, is having a conversation, being a place for a conversation and a debate about the future of the Democratic Party and what kind of Democratic candidates we want to elect, and focusing on primaries and what kind of party we want to be, what we want to stand for. And I think there's a healthy debate to be had. There's also a lot of emotion around that, especially now. But I think that's critical because I don't think, now, the reason we still say go vote Democrats is because when it's, at the end of the day, when it's Democrats versus Donald Trump and his brand of Republicans, then it's a pretty easy choice, even if the Democrats aren't perfect and you don't like them that much. But ideally, we want to build a party that people want to be part of, and that people aren't just holding their nose and voting for the lesser of two evils, but actually excited to go vote for candidates. Like, that's the goal. But there's triage to do in the Trump era, right? Which is just like, we got to stop bad things from happening. But then another big project is, okay, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this crisis so that we're, again, back to my earlier point, so that we're not winning elections by 10,000 votes in Wisconsin or 20,000 votes in Pennsylvania, right? Because, if Kamala Harris squeaked by, right, this time around, and she was president right now, but the vote was really, really close, we'd still be in this crisis, I think.
Would there,
political crisis.
and this is just a blue sky philosophical question.
Yeah.
Would there be any fumble that the Democrats could do that would potentially lose you as a voter to go, or as a political commentator to go, you know what, in good conscience, I can't tell you that voting blue is the right thing to do?
I think voting is about the outcomes that you want, right? And it is a binary choice in this country, because the way that our system is, it's two parties.
Right.
People can start third parties, independent parties, great. It's just very hard to gain traction. Reforms like proportional representation, ranked choice voting, all this stuff would be great.
Yeah.
Again, we can't do any of this right now because we have full Republican control and they're all fealty to Trump, right? That's the only thing we have right now. So in that environment, it is a binary choice. And if it is a choice between, let's say, the most annoying Democratic politician,
Right.
who annoys me to no end,
Okay.
who I don't.
You can name names.
No,
It's
a
totally
lot
fine.
of them. There's a lot of them.
We're just wearing
You know what?
lab
It's I
mics, so
can't
we're
pick is the problem.
Okay, got it. Got it.
And Donald Trump or a Republican who are going to do the things we're now seeing them do, and we'll see them do over the next 4 years.
Okay.
Of course, I'll vote for the Democrat because it's harm reduction, right?
Gotcha.
And so if Democrats suddenly just gave up all their values and started acting like Republicans, or acting like Donald Trump, then maybe I wouldn't vote for them then. But I'm always going to vote for the lesser of two evils, because I do think that the outcomes of elections matter. And I think there is a huge difference right now in whether Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans control Washington and have a lot of power, and Democrats do.
Okay. You may be exhausted by reading these think pieces, but a lot of think pieces have been written about this was the election of podcasting. This was the podcaster's election.
Sure was.
Obviously, it played a big role to some extent in terms of viewership. You had Lex, Theo, Joe, Ben, you guys, Jordan Peterson, Mel Robbins. Shout out to Mel. Come on the pod. But if you actually just look at Lex, Theo, Joe, Ben, and Jordan, these five guys reached more people than MSNBC, Crooked Media, Late Night, certainly my podcast, combined. What do you think about that? And do you think these think pieces are overstating how influential podcasters really are? Or are they overstating?
It's impossible to overstate that.
Okay.
No. It's interesting. So much of what has changed about media over the last decade in some ways leads to the format that podcasting allows, right? And by that I mean, I now podcast all my days. When I go do cable hits, or I go on television, or a late night show, whatever it may be, suddenly you're back in this environment where you're like, okay, you got 5 minutes, it's a 5-minute segment, and you got to say it all at once, and you got to get your talking points out, and you got to do.
Yeah.
And there's an artifice to that I think people in this information environment where social media makes everything so personal and authentic and sort of organic and right, like you're watching TikToks, you're seeing people just say whatever anywhere.
Yeah.
That when you see someone who is sitting during an interview, polished, doing their talking points, you don't trust them as much. And as you pointed out, like trust is sort of the biggest challenge that people in politics face right now. And I think that people who, if an audience is listening to you talk for like an hour, like you're talking to your friend, then they're going to trust you more, even if they don't agree with you all the time. Even if you say things that are not, that like they'll just be like, okay, well, at least I got to hear that person. I get to hear the nuance to the conversation. I get to hear that person joke a little bit. Maybe that person's a little more human than I thought.
Yeah.
I think that's what those podcasts did for Donald Trump. Like Donald Trump was at his best in some of those podcasts because it was hard to see him as the second coming of Hitler when he's just sitting there shooting the shit and asking, who did he ask about cocaine? He had this long, I forget.
Theo, yeah.
Theo, yes, Theo.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there, you're like, well, that's something new from Donald Trump, and he doesn't seem menacing, right? And so I think that did him some favors, but I also think that more electeds spending more time just having conversations with people that are not like time limited. All right, 5 minutes is up. Did you get all your talking points out? Did you say what your communications director wanted you to say? I think that is a valuable way to build trust with audiences.
I have constructed another very smart original question that you've never heard before.
Cool.
And it is totally going to blow your mind. Why don't liberals have a Joe Rogan for the left?
Oh my God.
And does this question make you want to scream into a pillow?
I mean, look, no, because I feel like I have talked about it now so many times.
To death.
We had one. His name was Joe Rogan, and then we decided that going on shows who are hosted by people that we disagree with is bad, and then if you go on those shows, that somehow you are validating all of the views of the person who's hosting the show, and that is bad. So for a couple years, Democrats said, we're not going to go on Fox. Bernie Sanders goes on Rogan, gets all this criticism because of Rogan's views, because if you sit down with someone and talk to them, suddenly you're responsible for all their views, platforming, all that kind of stuff. And it pushed a lot of people away, and it's nonsense. And so I think that like if liberals want their own Joe Rogan, they're going to have to understand that it could be someone who doesn't share all of our views. And that's okay, because most Americans don't share all of our views.
Would the Pod Save guys go on Rogan?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I
don't think he knows who we are or invite us, but yeah, sure.
My biggest critique of that argument is I just disagree with the premise completely. The majority of the people that exist in the media ecosystem or YouTube ecosystem fall into one of two camps. The first is, I think they're either more curious than they are partisan.
That's
Genuinely,
very true.
Straight up. Like, I just don't know, and I'm just trying to figure it out, and I'm here to like have a conversation and or vibe. And the second is I just need the Google AdSense money.
That is big, yeah.
I'm 46 years old. What else am I going to do? Right. And my kids need braces. So I need to do something.
Yeah.
You know.
That's about right.
But to emphasize the first point is that's what I legitimately think when people get there's these hard labels. I actually think it's counterproductive to if the goal is to have like a really rich, robust conversational society where you try to talk about these issues in a meaningful way.
It is the only way to move forward. It's the only way progress happens.
Got it.
And I think about this from the perspective of a political strategist because I can never leave that part of me behind.
Right.
But so I think about it from an organizing perspective.
Right.
And the people I meet who have sort of like the best handle on politics and persuasion, whether they are far left, center right,
Right.
are organizers. Because if you're an organizer, you have to go door to door and you have to meet people in the community who have weird views that don't line up with not just views that are opposed to your politics, but views that just don't make sense, right? You're very pro-choice, but you're, very pro-gun or whatever it may be, right? This is like the median American voter has all kinds of views that are somewhat complex and sometimes contradictory. And in order to win elections, you have to persuade those people with some views you don't like or weird views to, come join your team.
Yeah. Right now, there's a lot of liberal op-eds and columns about what the Democrats did wrong. But what did the Republicans do right?
Donald Trump has figured out how to command people's attention in a way that I think no politician has in a long time. And I think that right-wing figures are also
better than Obama?
I was going to say, I think Obama's the last. It's hard to compare because it was such a different information environment, but I do think there's some similarities there in being able to command people's attention. I think Trump has done it in such a more intense way because if you think about it, when he won in 16 and even in 15, then it was Twitter, right? He was tweeting all the time. He was in our faces all the time.
Right.
And he didn't care if it was positive attention or negative attention, it was attention. And he knew that making himself the center of everything, there would be negative polarization to that, and he'd have a lot of opposition. Mm-hmm. But also people know him and they feel comfortable with him, right? Yeah. And now, I think what has worked for him hasn't worked for a lot of other Republican politicians, partly because there's a big swath of this country that knows Donald Trump from Apprentice. He's a celebrity, right? Before
no, he's a phenomenal TV personality.
And so they think, and I think that helps because it's like, how bad can he be? He was the guy in my living room all the time.
Sure, he was
right?
Home Alone too.
Right, and so I think they're very good at commanding attention. And I think Democrats have not figured out quite how to do that. I also think that just from a tactical perspective, like Trump professionalized his campaign this time around in a way that he hadn't in prior campaigns.
What do you mean by that?
I think that a lot of people who worked on Donald Trump's campaign this time around were like real Republican operatives who've had success, that were like with like establishment Republicans. Yeah. And I think because the whole Republican Party is now a Trump party, he had a lot more talent to choose from. Right. This time around, so like Susie Wiles, his White House chief of staff, who was his campaign manager, was like very well respected in Florida and successful in Florida and respected by some Democrats in Florida, right? And so like these people knew what they were doing on Trump's campaign in a way that they hadn't before. It was more of a shit show in 20 and 16.
I also think that the Republicans spoke to the current cultural moment much better than Democrats. The disconnect that I'm seeing is the media and the media establishment is not delineating the difference between the median Democrat is not the median American.
Yeah.
And the Republican Party this time around was able to communicate to the median American far better.
Well, and to that point, the other thing they did is basically say, so you don't like Donald Trump? That's fine. Did you like the Trump economy? Are you annoyed with the Democrats? Are you annoyed with what they've done culturally? Right. Are you annoyed with the high cost of everything? Uh-huh. Then you don't have to love Donald Trump, but he's going to fix stuff. And that was a message that was directed to an audience that was broader than just his base. I think the other challenge for Democrats in the media is we think about, because we know more about Trump's base and Trump fans and what they think about politics, and than we do the median voter who doesn't pay much attention to politics.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest divide right now is this education divide, because it is people with a 4-year college degree, which make up a third of the country, and then the 2/3 of the country without a college degree is.
We actually have a graph that I wanted to show you. Slide this in. So I'm so glad that you're talking about we talk about education, we talk about class and the way people vote. So this is something that is a graph of, you can see high education, high income. So it's based on education and income, and it's tracking previous elections. What does this graph symbolize? You kind of break this down for me.
I thought about this for the 2 decades I've been in politics.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, look, a third of our coalition when Barack Obama won in 2008 was white voters without a college degree, which I think would confuse a lot of commentators. And which is also why it was always, of course, racism played a role in Trump's victory in 2016. There are supporters of his who are just openly racist. That is true. There was an analysis, though, that sort of took hold after 2016 that the entire thing could be explained by racism. And that sort of, then it became, your identity should dictate your politics, right? That's clearly not the case now. But at the time, I was like, well, our coalition there was a bunch of non-college educated white people who voted for Barack Obama twice and then said, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And I don't think that the parties wrestled with that and what that means. I've sat down with those voters.
Yeah.
I've done a focus group for a podcast I do called The Wilderness, and I went to Milwaukee and I sat with a bunch of Obama Trump voters. And like every other voter, there's one guy who's like, well, I want marijuana to be legal, and I'm pretty liberal on drug legalization. He's like, but also immigration annoyed me, so I voted for Trump. And there's this other guy who was like, you know what? Obama was change, Trump is change. So that's why I voted for Obama and Trump.
Oh, they just wanted
change. Just wanted change.
Shake it up.
But I do think that as the years have gone by, I mean, it's education and income there.
Right.
I think that there's wealth inequality in this country, right? You have people who are in communities that have been largely left behind by globalization. And it's not necessarily that the living standards are so much worse, though they are. It is now that we are in this information environment with social media, you can live in this community where factories have moved overseas and you've seen Main Street totally change and things have closed down and you're still making a living and you're trying to support your family. And then you pick up Instagram and you see these rich assholes, celebrities, comedians, politicians, media figures, they're all having a great time. They're probably making jokes about you. They're probably looking down at you. And you get sort of angry. And you're also thinking okay, I don't want government handouts, but I do want someone who's gonna actually fight for me and my family, and I'm working 2 jobs, and I still can't afford the basics of life, and that pisses them off. And I think for a while it was, well, that's just white people, so they're also probably racist. And again, these things all sort of work together. But then we saw this with working class Latinos. We're seeing this, and I think even among black voters, what's interesting is it is the over 50 black vote that is still 70, 80% Democrat, 90% Democrat,
right.
Partly because of memories of the civil rights movement. But younger black voters, and especially younger black men, are starting to move away from Democrats. Because again, the salience of racial identity, even the salience of income, is now less than the salience of education.
Okay. You got to get out of here. Let's just end with some final words by you. Where does Crooked go from here? Where does Jon Favreau go from here? What would you like to share with the audience?
I would like to say that right now it feels awful. And I understand that it feels like a lot of people are they're angry, they're scared, they're just tired. And one thing to keep in mind is things change really fast. And never forget that we have agency. The story that's going to be written over the next 4 years is not a story that we have no control over, no matter how bleak it seems. And what we're going to keep doing on Pod Save America and in Crooked Media is making sure that people aren't just informed about what's going on or angry about what's going on or whatever else, but that we give people the tools and information to actually change the world around them. And we do that through, we have Vote Save America, where people can sign up and volunteer and support causes and candidates that they care about. We do it through all of our podcasts. And even though things seem bleak right now, one thing that helps me feel better, that I think can help our audience feel better, anyone watching feel better, is that when you're actually trying to make change, when you're actually out there trying to talk to people, persuade people, it feels better. And you're not always going to succeed, clearly, because of the situation right now, but the act of trying to bring people around to your point of view, the act of trying to organize, to build community, it is a hopeful act, and it's also much more fulfilling than just looking at your phone and screaming about the news.
That's awesome. Well, here's to agency and hope. Thanks, man.
Thank
this
you.
was great,
This
man.
was fun.
Thank
this
you.
Was really
this
good.
Was really fun.
I love that. Great
Okay.
questions.
All right.
Great questions.
Thanks for being on the show, man.
Cool.
Cool. Why didn't Pod save America? That's where you could do that slow punch in. Why didn't Pod save America? Be like, Mother Earth is a MILF is crazy. Is crazy.